Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for being a minute late. I'll call the work session for the Sierra Vista City Council for December 8th to order. And we have all the council members here. Today we're going to be blessed to have a presentation of one of our young scholars, and I'll turn it over to the Mayor Pro Tem for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I met Hannah a few weeks ago at a craft show in the mall, and she was so excited to tell me about her third grade project that she did at Huachuca Mountain Elementary School. And I was so impressed by it, I asked her to come talk to council about what she had learned. And so a little bit about Hannah. She was born in Maryland. She moved to Sierra Vista in December of 2015, and she, like I said, is a third grader at Huachuca Mountain Elementary School. And she's gone to Sierra Vista School District since pre-K, so her whole school career so far. She's a brownie in Girl Scouts and an orange belt of Tang So Do. Is that how we say it? So let's not get on her bad side. So Hannah, if you'll come on up and talk to us, we'd love to hear from you.
Hello. This is my presentation on government. So, first is civics. Being a good citizen includes knowing your responsibilities and your rights. Responsibilities are going to school and not littering. Rights are free religion and being who you want to be. There are 3 branches in the Arizona state government. 1, the legislative, 2, the executive, and 3, the judicial. Legislative includes the House of Representatives and the Senate, and they make laws. Executive involves the governor and attorney general. The judicial involves judges and courts. Local government. State government shares responsibilities with the local government. The local government involves city council and mayor. The mayor is Rick Mueller. City council members are usually elected by their ward, but in Sierra Vista they are not. City council meetings takes place once a month at City Hall. City council holds law-writing authority alongside the mayor, who holds executive authority, which means the mayor carries out the laws. 3 responsibilities of the city council are making laws, transportation, and road work. City council passes ordinances, which are city rules. If I were part of the city council, I would plant more trees to make fresh air everywhere. Trees would provide shade and make our city pretty. Also, there could be fruit trees like orange and apple that we could eat. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Do you have any questions for us?
No.
Okay, well, I want to give you the opportunity to say if there's anything else you want to add. And we appreciate you coming. It's a great report, and I hope you got an A. Tell your teacher the mayor says you should get an A on that. Okay? All right. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
That's it. We'll next go on to the next item, which is the December 10th council agenda. And as usual, we'll call the meeting to order, do the roll call and the invocation and the pledge and acceptance of the agenda, awards and presentations. And we have some presentations for some outgoing commissioners. And we have the city manager's report. Chuck, Mr. Petichik, is there anything on the city manager's report you want to share with us today?
Well, I'll go over these again on Thursday, but the EMS substation design build project is scheduled to open on the 18th, and then the police department locker room remodel. As you recall, we have a need for a women's locker room there, and that is scheduled to open on January 22nd. And then the Garden Canyon Linear Park, St. Andrews parking lot project, 5 bids were received, and they're currently under review. So those will be amongst the ones I'll be talking about on Thursday.
Any questions for Mr. Petichik on his report? Yes, ma'am.
Just not on Chuck's report on the first item. Are we recognizing our outgoing council members?
I will be doing that at the end of the meeting.
Oh, at the end of the meeting. I don't know, finding him baked bread or something.
I'll be doing it underneath my closing remarks by the mayor. That's when we'll be doing that. Okay?
Gotta bake some bread for everybody.
Did you say break bread?
Well, yeah, well,
Banana-
you can
banana
I'm
or-
sure, gifts will not be rejected, so.
Okay.
Yeah, banana
I
bread
didn't
works.
know if it was this meeting or in.
No, it's this
January.
this will be the last meeting for
Like
two of our
pumpkin pie,
council
too.
members.
Yes, it will be.
Thank you.
Make me cry.
Next is a consent agenda. We have meeting minutes for November 10, November 12, and November 19 that have to be approved. Are there any additions, deletions, corrections, comments on those meetings? Yes, ma'am.
There's just one portion on the November 12th agenda item, but Jill and Maria are already aware and will be correcting. It's just a matter of clarification on something that was said in the meeting by Mr. Reed
Okay,
on the CDBG stuff. So that'll be fixed by Thursday.
that'll be fixed by Thursday, okay. Anything else on those? Then item 2.4 and 2.5 are reappointments to the Parks Commission and the Employment Benefit Trust. Any questions or comments on those? Okay. We next go to item number 3, which is a public hearing item. And this is basically a report on the status of our Housing and Urban Development and Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, our CAPER. Mr. McLaughlin, do you want to address us on that, please, sir?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is a HUD-required document that we prepare and submit each year. It evaluates our performance in meeting the goals and objectives in the 5-year consolidated plan. This report covers program year 2019, which coincides with our fiscal year. In total, CDBG funds spent in PY19 totaled $487,248.80. Program expenditures were consistent with the consolidated plan. About 3/4 were spent on public infrastructure and facilities, 1/5 on COVID response programs, and the balance went towards public service programs and administration. The CAPER was, notice of the CAPER was published in the local newspaper. The comment period has expired without any public comments being received, and with that, I'll answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. McLaughlin on this item? Yes, ma'am.
So on the public comment, didn't have to be opened by council or anything, it just was put like right before Thanksgiving in the paper?
Mr. Mayor,
Well,
Councilmember.
actually, I think that was part of the whole program. It was already announced.
The council's adopted a citizen participation plan for CDBG programs. And within that citizen participation plan, there's a public notice period set for the CAPER that was followed. In this case, it was 15 days. During public emergencies, it could be reduced to 5 days, but since we had ample time, we let it run the full 15, and we made it available on the city's website at City Hall, and as has been in the past in prior years, it's a reporting document, didn't generate any public interest or comment.
And the city council obviously had previously approved the methodology of notifying the public to meet the federal standard. That's really the answer.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. And then the other was, what was the Fry town site improvements that were mentioned in the CAPER?
There were 2 projects. One involved curb, gutter, and sidewalk along the north side, or the west side of North 5th Street, just south of Denman. And there was an alleyway improvement project between 1st and 2nd Street, south of Denman, that involved installing a curb along the east side to better control drainage and a complete resurfacing. And that was done last spring.
Okay. I think that's all I have on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. McLaughlin? All right, thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Well, then now move on to item number 4. and that is the amendments to city code, chapter 36. And again, I guess it's Mr. McLaughlin.
Filling in for Jeff today. And so these are consistency amendments to bring the city code into alignment with the procedural manual that you approve for the boards and commissions. It relates to the membership requirement, revising the cap in the city code to a maximum of 5 members for the Planning and Zoning Commission to be consistent with, again, the manual that you adopted by resolution. That 5 is the minimum required by state statute, so we're consistent in that regard. And the balance of the code section is in conformance, so we're not recommending any other changes.
So essentially, we're making the documents you use in compliance with what the city, what the council's already voted on. We're making a correction.
Yeah, I guess I could have just said that.
I thought planning and zoning wasn't part of those changes to the
It
commission.
was, yes, ma'am, it was.
I thought because it was required.
Well, it remained a commission because it was regulatory, just like the Parks and Rec is regulatory in nature. But we can set, as long as we at least have 5 by state law, we can still set the number. Okay, any other discussion?
I have a question.
Ma'am?
Did we change the Parks and Rec as well, or do we have to do that by
No,
ordinance?
Parks and Rec is internal, it doesn't have an additional requirement to go from 5 to 7. There's no place else that says,
They don't require us to do it this way,
That's
like in
correct.
ordinance? Okay. That's what I wanted to know.
that's a quick answer, without going into a deep explanation, yeah.
Yeah, that's just what I wanted to clarify.
Okay.
It's like, are they staying at 7 or going to 5?
They're at 5 now, or
Okay.
or they will be at the first of the year,
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
attrition, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. We'll go on to item number 5. Adoption of fee schedule corresponds with land use assumptions and infrastructure improvement plans. And David. You don't look like Jennifer, but that's who I have here for Mr. Felix.
He can't read if it's that low. He can't see the paper that low.
Okay, Mayor, members of council, I know this is a long, tedious process. You can thank the state legislature for that because of the minimum time required between each step that we've had to follow so far. And I know you guys have enjoyed it so much, it may motivate 2 outgoing council members to run again in 2 years to participate again. To kind of recap, we've gone through and attributed where the impact fee funds are at, what needs to go on. We've established an infrastructure improvement plan showing what the money and the fees collected are going to go and pay for, which is basically buy-in for everything else that we have already done. We've projected out the building growth that's going to happen in the community over the next 10 years. This will be updated in 3 to 4 years when we go through this process again and get the latest data all the time. If council does wish and we are going under some major sudden changes, we can always adopt and go through this process in less than 5 years, but the maximum in between studies is 5 years. So based off of the needs that we've approved, the development that is approved, this is the proposed fee structure that's going to go on. The original fees in 2016, 100% value, were just above $5,000. If you take and grow that at the construction cost index, which is allowable under our code, those current fees would be $7,200. The current fees at 100% are just over $4,000, and the proposed fees are just over $5,000. The current fees are in at 75% of maximum allowable for infrastructure, police, and fire. But back in 2006, when we adopted the code, we at that time established a 7/10 differential in the construction sales tax classifications to offset that fee reduction. It is state law that if you do not adopt 100% fees, you must make that up from someplace else. Our recommendation here is to adopt the fees at 100%, reduce the construction sales tax, which is the next item on your agenda, if you do pass this one as it is, and then we will be good for the next few years. we are set under this resolution and the next resolution. If they're both adopted, the new fees will go into effect on March 1st, 2021. The building community knows very much what's going on because we did have a large influx of building permits in the end of June, just before the moratorium happened to go off under the current fees. So the developers are aware of the fees, and it's up to them to decide whether to try and get their projects in before March 1st or after March 1st, because obviously, depending on what you're building and what's going on, before or after could be fiscally advantageous to you. So be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Felix? I know we've beat on this for a while. Yes, ma'am.
All right, so the development fees were assessed on the developer, and the construction sales tax, who pays that?
Construction sales tax is paid by anyone that falls under the construction tax classification. They've done some modifications for it, and I'll tell you before the modifications, if you had the hot water heater replaced on your house, you paid it. It was anything that's under the construction sales tax classification. Now, the state is part of the reason for making this adoption and this changes recommended to you is the state has updated what they consider, and so some of what they call repair maintenance is no longer taxable under the construction sales tax classification. But if you do an addition to your house, that would be. So you would also be paying this offset for the new construction.
Let me see if I can, you still got a quizzical look on your face, so let me see if I can explain this. And David, if I go off base, pull me back. Construction sales tax is on materials that go into the construction of a building normally, okay? And what happens if you're building we're talking new construction here. So if we're building a new house, you pay construction sales tax on certain things. Now, that obviously is going to be initially paid by the builder and then charged to the homeowner as they move in. Okay? Am I on target so far, guys?
Construction sales tax is on the total value of the contract.
Okay, the construction contract.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the construction contract. Okay? So, and that's paid by and payer is in fact the homeowner.
Yeah.
Okay, so that causes housing costs to go up.
Which, in short, also development fees are going to be charged
Well-
to the homeowner through the cost of the house.
And that's the second part. When you have a development fee, that's the homeowner buying into what's been developed and is being developed for the community, paying their fair share for the access on the roads, the access to the library, police, fire, etc.
And to understand too, if you were to do an addition onto your home, if you were to close in your garage and make it an extra bonus room, that is considered construction sales tax. So you are helping to pay, that person's helping to pay for the development fees, the offset on development fees. So it's not just the construction sales tax on new homes that was the offset for these fees. It's any sort of thing that was classified as construction sales tax.
I think
A new patio on your home.
I think we're starting to mix apples and oranges. On this issue that's before us right now, we're talking about taxes, or actually buying into what's already been put in infrastructure, or what's being planned for infrastructure, correct?
Right,
Okay.
most of these are what has been built.
What's been built, okay. So the next item is, we were allowed under the old rules, Sarah, to offset some of this by using construction sales tax, okay? We're not gonna do that anymore because we're at 100%.
Correct.
So we're not charging a construction sales tax if we vote on that on the next item.
That's correct.
And Mr. Mayor, the point David was making was that other types of projects, not necessarily new development, were also helping to subsidize that construction sales tax. So that will no longer be the case with what you're doing here today.
So are you completely confused now?
Well,
Okay, so I would suggest that if you have problems, talk to Chuck or David. Go through this in detail.
Yep. I think I'm tracking.
What's that?
I said, I think I'm tracking.
Okay, well, just, think about it, and if you need to verify it, we got time to do that. Other questions?
I just have a comment.
Ma'am?
I just think it's important that we reiterate and note that although the proposed rate is seemingly quite a bit higher, that with the offset of construction sales tax savings, we're only looking at a $222 gain for an average build.
That's correct.
So I just want to make sure that's understood.
Okay, anybody else? All right, thank you very much. We'll go on to item number 6. Again, this is Mr. Felix. He's going to talk to us about
Part two
construction
of it.
sales tax.
Part 2 of this. As we just discussed, in 2006, when we implemented the development impact fees, the developers came to the council and asked to have a 7/10 increase in the construction sales tax. And that applied again to anybody under the construction tax classification, not just new homes, to help offset and reduce the development impact fees on transportation, fire, and police. Since that time, the city council has raised the regular sales tax from 0.75 to 0.95, 1.95, dropping that differential from 0.7 to 0.5. As I mentioned, the state has also recently gone through and updated what it considers construction sales tax, and some items that were in there before are no longer considered construction sales tax. Also, to make it cleaner for the reporting, we're recommending making them even. State law does say that if you do have any construction sales tax over your average retail sales tax, you must give that credit over the development fees and the developers building the home. So with the fees being adopted at 100%, we are required by state law to keep our construction sales tax at the same level as our retail, and that's what this resolution does. It is set to go into effect March 1st, and the actual reason for both of these going into effect March 1st is Department of Revenue needs a 60-day notification from any tax rate change in order to get it out to all the constituents and get it into their system. And March 1st is a convenient day that has just passed the 60-day required notice.
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did we have any comments on these 2 changes?
No, we received no comments on them through any part of this process.
I know, like, it's been out for comment a while.
And I will tell you, I've had discussions with different developers, and there was some confusion about what the questions you brought up under the last item.
Yeah.
And it took a little explaining to to get them to figure out what was really going on. And some of them weren't aware of the changes that the state had made in the construction sales tax. So it took a little doing.
Okay. Well, when we say the developers requested, who are we talking about? Is that bad to
Mr.
say who we're talking about?
Years ago.
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Pacheco, back in 2006, there was quite a bit of construction going on in Sierra Vista, so it was a boom time, and that was the first time that the council had taken a look at impact fees as a way to help pay for new infrastructure related to growth in the community. And as I said, the growth rate was fairly high. So needless to say, since it was the first time we were looking at that, the development community was large and strong, given all the construction that was going on. And they, of course, had a lot of questions with regards to the fees and the process and even the efficacy of doing that. So council at the time tasked me with the responsibility of working with the development community and trying to find a way through in terms of any compromises necessary to do that. So after a series of meetings, we discussed various options, and the one we came to was the increase in construction sales tax in exchange for a lower development impact fee at that time. And then that was presented to the council, and ultimately that was approved. So now there's been a lot of changes since then in state law, and this is probably the cleaner way to go about doing it, and really doesn't represent much of an increase in fees overall from that time.
Or cost of new housing and facilities.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Felix on this item? Okay, we'll now move to new business, item number 7. Mr. Felix, you're gonna have to bring a seat with you for Thursday's meeting, I got a feeling, a chair.
Bring a sack lunch.
And this is transfer general funds to the Park Development Fee Fund.
Okay, Mayor, members of council, the city's been very fortunate this last fiscal year despite the COVID situation. We did have extra revenues come in due to the internet sales tax, online sales tax. As you've seen from the report, that we did get some despite
You mean
what-
unprojected, you don't mean extra.
Well, we did not budget for the revenue because we could not estimate it. And to listen to your state legislature, it was going to be a nominal amount anyway and wouldn't amount to anything. Based off our reports, that's been shown to be slightly different.
That was also what they were parroting what the Department of Revenue said.
Yes. We also had expenditure savings. Unfortunately, we'd have to close events and close buildings, so we'd event savings, salary savings, certain major events like the wine festival, and some of those were canceled. So we've had significant revenue over expenditure in the general fund estimated for the fiscal year 2020. Right now, we're looking at a excess of $577,000 in the general fund. Understand we did pay the full budgeted amount of public safety retirement, which was in excess of a couple $100,000 over required for each one of those, which should benefit us in 2 years when it gets incorporated into our rates. So what we're recommending to do is to transfer $450,000 in fiscal year 20 from the general fund to the Park Development Fee Fund. That fund is currently $3.4 million cash and fund balance negative. We did pass development fees to try and bring that thing whole over the next 10 years. However, as the mayor pointed out in one of the prior meetings, even with these fees, it was still showing a deficit at the end of the 10 years. Hopefully by doing this, we can help speed up the recovery of that fund and then get it back on track to be able to be doing what it's supposed to be doing and constructing new facilities and not still paying for basically Sears Center Park's original construction. Since this is over a $10,000 deviation that was not in the budget, and it is between funds, state law requires that council approve it. State law does set the transfer of money at the fund level, so if this all occurred within the general fund, you would not need to do it, for instance, going from police to fire or something similar. But since this is going from the general fund to the Park Development Fee Fund, council approval is required by state law. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Felix?
Oh, that makes sense.
You sure, Sarah?
I'm gonna think of one. Hold on.
Okay.
Just kidding. I get that one. I'm tracking.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion? All right, thank you, Mr. Felix. We'll now go on to item number 8, which is the approval of payment plan for Castle Cook Sewer Interceptor. Mr. Felix?
David again.
Mayor, members of council, this item is actually in front of you more as a bookkeeping item because you approved the extension of the repayment of the agreement. The city attorneys recommended you do vote on this amortization schedule. As we brought forward to you to extend the repayment, the city fronted the money for the construction of the Avenida del Sol sewer down to the bottom of the tribute area. Castle and Cook at the time agreed to guarantee the repayment of that loan. We did put an interest rate of prime rate on that, which Mr. Kaufman wonders what they did, but it was a good rate for us at the time. The current balance is about $1.5 million. However, $600,000 of that is principal, which under other areas of town are being recovered under the connection fees. So basically, we're going to ask them to have them repay the interest that's due. The 1.07% interest rate that we've agreed upon and are recommending to you is the average return that we've gotten from the state pool over the last year. So there's no loss of income to the city on having them pay us back over this time versus getting the cash and putting it in the state pool. So that means that we're not subsidizing Castle and Cook for anything. The principal balance will be put forward to us as people connect to the thing. We are going to be looking at the sewer connection fees over the next 6 months to make sure there's no other interceptors that need to be done. Since we have also talked about removing the package plant, we're going to review the fees that were put in there for the package plant and see if they would cover the expansion that would be required at the current plant instead. So that will be part of the study of the connection fees for the principal portion. But they will pay the interest portion, 10 years, paid annually at the anniversary date of the contract, one payment a year, and that over time will certainly help the sewer fund's negative cash balance get back to zero as well. And the main reason for the sewer fund's cash balance is the other various interceptors we have fronted over time, the big one being the one by the school district. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Felix on sewer? Any other comment? Chuck, did you have a comment?
Mary, I just wanted to point out, and this is more an aside of interest, but all of these previous items that you've discussed all go back to 2006 and are kind of tied together in a way. So we're actually cleaning up a lot of things that occurred 14 years ago by doing all these things. So it's nice to see that finally happen here.
Man, who was here in 2006?
It's nice to be in a position to clean that up, Chuck. And that's because of good planning and financial management, and we appreciate that. I'm sure the citizens do too. So I guess we're going to give you a break, Mr. Felix, if there's no more questions. Okay. Next item is the proposed, let's see. Number 9 is the proposed amendments to Infill Incentive District Policy. Mr. McLaughlin.
I'll start with the short version. If any point requires elaborate, glad to provide that. At your last work session, we presented the proposed amendments to the 2005 resolution enacting the Infill Incentive District. The purpose of the district is to encourage and facilitate the redevelopment and reuse of properties within the West Sierra Vista and Cloud 9 planning areas. The state law provides for 3 incentives that local governments may provide: permit expediting, waivers to municipal fees, as well as relief from development code standards. The direction we received at your last meeting was to add a requirement that the developer or applicant provide an economic impact statement to better determine the public benefit that the project will provide back to the city. The criteria that were added match what is required under the West Sierra Vista Partnership Grant Program, and that will allow us to determine the amount of private investment and any impact on property tax base, the number and wage scale of any jobs that result from the economic activity, demonstration that local contractors and suppliers will be used to the maximum extent possible, and any other measurable benefit that they want to point out. There was also consensus to better define the scope of the city manager's approval authority relative to granting development code waivers. We rewrote the criteria so it's more objective and measurable. The parameters are consistent with the subject matter in the originally adopted resolution, and with that, I'll answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. McLaughlin?
I have a comment. Actually, did you, and I might have missed it and I apologize, did you mention the part about the hearing officer and the things we took out to go straight to development code?
I did not talk about that, so that portion of the resolution was removed. Yeah. And any denial by the city manager would come back in the form of a development agreement if the applicant wishes to press the matter forward.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and thanks for the question, Ms. Gray, but the way it's written now provides for objective criteria for, to aid me in making those types of decisions with regards to whether a project qualifies or not. And obviously, if there is an issue or we deem it inappropriate. There is still the vehicle of negotiating a development agreement with the proponent and bringing that back to the council for approval. So there's no real need for an appeal under that scenario.
You get the floor.
You
You
still
wanna
want me?
keep
I
going?
just- Yes,
Keep
I just, a comment is just that I think that this is a much better proposal than we received last time, because I think it's more clearly defined for the developer and more clearly defined for you as a city manager to make it easier to make a decision one way or the other. So thank you for making those fixes.
Much less arbitrary.
Yes.
Any other comments?
No question.
Ma'am?
Okay. On this, is this kind of like an extension of the West End redevelopment plan or grant program that you mentioned, or is this really considered separate?
It exercises a different section of state statutes, but they are mutually supportive in terms of the ultimate aims, facilitating reuse and redevelopment within the West End area.
Complementary, I think, is a good word.
Complementary, okay. And then, is it only applying to vacant land, or it's applying to vacant buildings as well?
Okay, so it covers all properties, whether they're developed or undeveloped in the West End planning area in Cloud 9. So if a property owner wishes to make a modification to an existing building, they could ask that the permit plan not only be expedited, but that the associated fees be reduced, and it would be incumbent upon them to make the case as to why they should be reduced using the criteria that's established in the policy. If there's a deviation to a development code requirement, they could also, that fit under the criteria, say parking or drainage, they could pursue that through the city manager, again, showing the justification and the need for his consideration.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
Mrs. Calhoun?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just curious about the, if the area is not zoned residential, you could provide a waiver that would allow someone to put a home on the first floor. I was curious about why only on the first floor? If it's a two-story building, why couldn't they put a
That's a great
living
question.
quarters?
So, under the code, definition of mixed-use building means a residential unit above a ground floor. And so this would provide flexibility for an existing one-story building to serve multiple uses, including
see.
residential.
It's great, thank you.
Anything else from Mr. McLaughlin?
To
Ma'am?
add to what Rachel said, thank you for addressing. I feel like this addressed all our concerns that we brought up before. And you did a good job incorporating them.
And Mr. Boone.
Yes, and Tony.
Okay. All right, thank you, Matt. We'll go to item number 10, and we have a approval of the PTASP for the Department of Transportation by Ms. Jones. Ms. Jones?
Afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. So we're here today for your approval of the Public Transportation Safety Plan. We've always followed the safety protocols and procedures implemented by the City of Sierra Vista. In July of 2018, FTA published the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan Final Rule, and this rule requires certain operators of public transportation systems that receive federal funds under FTA's Urbanized Area Formula grants to develop safety plans that include the processes and procedures to implement safety management systems. So ADOT partnered with the City of Sierra Vista and 6 other cities to prepare a combined safety plan, which was attached to the agenda item, 176 pages. The safety plan is required to be submitted to FTA by December 31st, 2020, and it must be updated annually by each transit department to stay in compliance. This is simply, it's just another step in the process to maintain our funding eligibility, and it confirms and updates what we already have in place. I would be happy to answer any questions.
The only question I have is, what's in the plan meets the standards required by the U.S. Transportation Department?
Yes.
I noticed a lot of the pages said we will update, we will revise, so we're not there yet. We have to.
That is correct.
Within the year.
We have 12 months, yes, to answer all those. And there is also a matrix on page, let's see what page this is, page 152 that has the different sections and the areas where each city still has to provide information. So yes, but we have a year to submit that. And all we do is we just have to submit it to ADOT.
Oh, okay. And just out of curiosity, what's a micro transit? Lake Havasu has one,
it's
and it's the only thing
amazing.
that was different than ours.
So I actually had a conference call with Lake Havasu about that, and what it is instead of using grant funding to buy these big buses, they're using grant funding to buy small SUVs. So it's kind of like Uber. The city hires drivers, but they're city employees, and they go out in an SUV or a smaller vehicle, and they do pretty much like the door-to-door service. They just pick up, they drop off, but it's showing that it's a lot less expensive than running a whole transit system by having the buses. So
But it's different than paratransit?
it's different, yes, because you don't have to have a handicap. You don't have to have any type of medical qualifications. It's just like a regular transit system, but they're smaller vehicles, and you can do one-on-one.
Cool.
It's interesting, definitely.
Are they limited to certain size communities?
No, not at all. It's just a matter and depending on how many buses you currently have, there's a percentage of grant funding that you're allowed to purchase the smaller vehicles. It's interesting.
Yeah. Certainly worth looking into.
Any other comments or questions for Linda?
Just a comment to welcome Ms. Johns to her new position.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Jones.
Thank you. You guys have a great evening.
Okay, item 11 is an addendum to the city manager's contract. Ms. Fleming?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So the resolution that I have before you for your consideration today is an addendum to the city manager's contract from March the 28th of 1996. The addendum is one change, and that change is a salary increase of 2%. That would be effective 12/21/2020, and that's the only change in the addendum.
Questions or discussion? Ma'am?
So, it's my understanding in the discussion that the 2% was supposed to cover this entire fiscal year as it did with all the other employees. So why the date of 12/21?
Because we're not aware of the discussion for the 7-1.
I was pretty clear.
Oh, that was part of the resolution.
And that was in an executive session.
Yeah, well, that was
so-
part of the recommendation.
Yes,
So we just need to change the date.
And
for-
and that is very easily can be changed. So with the approval, you can just ask that the resolution be changed to the 7-1 of 2020.
We
Well,
can do
actually,
that. We have enough time to do that.
We have enough time to do that administratively. The only time you would do that if it was the day of or less than 24 hours for public notice.
So we can just change
We
the
can go ahead
date
and
to
change the date to the
7-1,
proper
2020.
date that was recommended by the council.
And then in doing the proper date that was, and I know that you weren't in the executive session, so sorry, I just
That's
didn't
okay,
somehow.
no problem.
But does that mean the amount changes, or will the amount of 174,812, does that change?
No, that's an annual
That's his
rate. So
well,
that would end
obviously,
up being the annual rate from 7/1 to 6/30 versus it being a prorated rate in this fiscal year. But actually, the annual rate does not change there. So it would simply be a date change, and then we would do a back pay on that payroll.
That's really where I was going with that. I've had too much coffee and can't
Well,
think.
that's fine.
Thank
We'll
you.
make that correction for you for
Thank
Thursday.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Anything else? All right, Ms. Fleming, thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Next is item number 12, and we have Ms. Hector coming up to tell us about proclamation about hummingbirds. Ms. Hector.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Councilmember Calhoun, did you want to take this one, or do you want me to?
Please go ahead.
Okay. All right, so as many of you may well already know, Sierra Vista is well known across the state of Arizona and even across the United States as the hummingbird capital of the United States. And this is because the area's notoriety among birders, especially those looking for hummingbirds. Sierra Vista has been recognized as the hummingbird capital of the United States for quite some time by many, many people. Although hummingbirds can be found in many locations in the United States, Sierra Vista is unique to the variety and number of species that visit the area. Of the approximately 26 species of hummingbirds that enter North America, 17 can be found in the United States, and of those, 15 can be found here in Sierra Vista, including several species that are rarely found outside of this area. On a good day, birders can see 15 species, and they'll generally see the 14 species in one day. So few other hummingbird locations in the United States host an equal number of species or the same variety of species that are found here in Sierra Vista. Just of note, with the volume and variety of hummingbirds that pass through Sierra Vista annually, the Southeastern Arizona Bird Observatory has been conducting an ongoing study for more than a decade, contributing to a national database, research, and data about hummingbird life and migration patterns in the United States. And also, the Ramsey Canyon Preserve lists 14 species of hummingbirds among their 150 species that can be found at the preserve, and that simply adds to the preserve's world-renowned reputation as one of the best birdwatching places on the planet. There are no budgetary impacts to this resolution, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Gwen, would you like to make some comments?
I simply would like to say, Judy, thank you so much for all you did about this project. You've really fleshed out my original thought of this is a great place to see hummingbirds. So, but I do have to add one other thing. The bees were really taking over the hummingbird feeders this year. And so we don't want to include them in this in any kind of way. They need to know we love bees, but to stay away from our feeders. But thanks again. You did so much. We did hear from one lady from the Audubon Society in Tucson that they were happy to hear that we were doing this and would be happy to support it. And hopefully we'll get a letter from them to that effect. But there are others in the community, and I'm sure around the country, who would very much support this effort. And I know our state at least one of our state legislators, possibly 2 or 3 of them, are looking forward to taking this forward to the state. So thanks so much for all you did.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
And thank Gwen for bringing it up.
Yeah, thank you. It was awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. All right, lucky number 13, resolution in support of Amtrak, and this is kind of the one where I gotta make sure we got a consensus. And Tony Boone, I guess you got the lead on this one.
So, Mr. Mayor, Council, I've just got a couple comments, time to frame this up front, but I also want to point out that Todd's here and Richard's here representing All Aboard Arizona, so any specific questions. I also understand that you've received all of the materials in the packet, some of which was transmitted to Councilmember Calhoun. So we took a look at this when it came up several weeks ago, or a couple months ago at this point. Time's moving fast. So up front, I want to say that this resolution supporting increased passenger service to Benson has no fiscal impact on the City of Sierra Vista's budget. You are simply supporting, in principle, the expansion of the Amtrak Southern Arizona service provided by the Sunset Limited or Texas Eagle, in this case, looking forward to a future daily service to Benson. Currently, the service for the long hauls have been limited to about 3 days a week, and effectively restarting daily service in Benson would provide the residents of Sierra Vista an alternate transportation method. And of course, there are studies, and they were included in the packet, about the economic impact statement to both Sierra Vista and Cochise County. Future discussions may include a bus service linking the city to the Benson train station, but that's not included within this resolution. And you'll also note Amtrak's priority efforts as they look forward to 2035 to link Los Angeles to Phoenix and Tucson. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Todd Liebman, President, of the 501c3 nonprofit All Aboard Arizona. Sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Common Council. It's a privilege to be here today about this really exciting opportunity that I think we have. And I just want to say we just had our passenger rail summit this last weekend in Tucson, most of it via Zoom, of course, because of the pandemic. But I think this is an exciting time for passenger rail. And in fact, Amtrak was they were closing in on before the pandemic, covering all their operational costs from revenues, which was pretty exciting. So passenger rail is in growth mode around the country. It has a tremendous opportunity, I think, for our region, opening up tourist opportunities out of Benson, transportation opportunities. And I really think when you have a train coming through providing daily service, it's really going to pop. Our information is that Amtrak is seriously moving in the direction of making the Sunset Limited Texas Eagle a daily operation. They might just need a little bit of a push. We're anticipating that Congress is going to appropriate additional funds, hopefully as part of the omnibus budget. We're very optimistic about that. This is a tremendous opportunity, I think, for this region, especially in the day and age when there's less and less air service to rural communities, less and less other kinds of transportation options. The intercity passenger train really can provide a tremendous option for journeys east and west out of Benson. So we're really enthusiastic about this, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have some questions.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. I apologize. I missed your name.
It's Todd Liebman. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I should have wrote it down. My first question is, you said that they were coming very close to covering most of their costs from revenue. How much are they getting from a government subsidy?
Okay, the Amtrak subsidy is, on an annual basis, pre-pandemic, was $2 billion. Now, putting that in perspective, a large freeway interchange can be $1 billion. So it's a really minuscule subsidy when you consider the economic impact. And this is a national passenger railroad that provides service from coast to coast, includes yard facilities, maintenance facilities, employs tens of thousands of people, provides a huge economic impact to the cities that it serves. It's probably the single best value in transportation of any service that the federal government subsidizes.
Thank you, sir. Do you know what capacity they are currently running at when they're going 3 times to Benson?
What the ridership level is?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Currently, post-pandemic, pre-pandemic.
Let's do pre-pandemic, because I think we can all agree that that's not really fair.
Sure. Pre-pandemic, okay, I don't have the ridership statistics out of Benson, but I do know Amtrak carried about 31 million passengers pre-pandemic, and that's steadily gone up. So it is definitely a growing service.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, did you have something?
I did. Have you received support from Benson City Council?
Well, they're on our list. I guess we started with Richard started with Douglas. Sierra Vista was close at hand, so we came to Sierra Vista, and Benson is definitely on our. We're gonna approach Benson as well.
Yeah, 'cause I worry about that, or thought about that just as it's in their town. That a lot of cases like this, we have the city itself requesting that kind of support from us and support us in supporting this. We haven't seen that, and also they just passed like a quiet zone through Benson, and I don't know if this impacts that, like the no train horns in Benson, or what do they call it? I'm saying it wrong.
It's a quiet zone, and
okay, they just
basically
passed
there's an area where they can't be using their horns at certain intersections, and that's to keep the residents.
Yeah.
Unlike in Flagstaff, where they're backing vehicle or backing train cars and changing tracks and everything else all night long.
Yeah.
having stayed up there at a motel one time in the wrong spot.
Yeah. So I know that in Benson, that has been a point of discussion is the quiet zone and that, so I don't know, I'd just be interested to hear their
Well,
comments.
I don't want to speak for Benson, but I will tell you, I have spoken with members of the community as well as the leadership, and they are all for having more passenger traffic.
Okay, does not be
How that,
industrial.
how that interferes with the quiet zone or not, you know, and that's something that's obviously something they'd have to deal with.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
that's what I had. Thank
Are you aware of any other passenger service that goes through Benson? Is
No.
there anything else that?
The Union Pacific Railroad owns the tracks, and of course Amtrak is a tenant on the tracks. And no, Amtrak is basically the primary passenger carrier in the United States, and really the only game in town for us here. Although that's interesting, there are some other carriers. The Rocky Mountaineer has just announced service in Colorado. That's going to be a tourist type of train that runs from Denver to Moab. So that's a new development. And there are some other agencies that are. Brightline, for example, is operating in Florida. They're a non-Amtrak carrier, and then Texas Central is being developed between Houston and Dallas-Fort Worth area. So there are some non-Amtrak carriers starting to develop.
Are you aware of anything like that in this area between Phoenix, Tucson, and Benson?
No. Amtrak really is the only game in town, and in fact, I think if the corridor development we're looking at right now between Tucson and Phoenix and ultimately Los Angeles would be Amtrak as well.
Okay.
And we're working with some folks in California as well as far as the Coachella Valley and maybe getting that service out to Yuma, ultimately to Phoenix. So
Nice.
it's definitely moving in the right direction, I think.
Any other questions for?
I was just gonna, should I add something?
Hey, if you do, you need to come up and tell us what your name is and speak at the mic so we get you on the TV, make you famous.
For 15 minutes
Get to
anyway.
take this off early. Yeah, I'm Richard Dodge. I'm with All Aboard Arizona, and I live in Douglas. We did a similar resolution in Douglas, and I kind of based this one on that, but we made several changes in my consultation with Gwen. I was just going to also add that rail is probably the most fuel efficient form of transportation other than water, shipping by water, and is actually 7 times safer than driving a car. So and that's per passenger mile. There's going to be 7 times as many deaths on the highways if you compare it with rail. So I'm not trying to criticize. I own 2 cars myself, drive it all over the place. I know we're all married to our cars, but having another option for the people in this area, I think, would be very beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Discussion among council? Yes, ma'am.
I guess I'll start. I talked to Gwen about this a little bit. I actually am not for doing this at all. My biggest reason is that I'm not sure at what point we as government get to tell other people how they're going to run their business and how they're going to make their money. And as Mr. Liedman said, most of what they're getting is from revenue and not from a subsidy. And had more of it come from a subsidy, I would have had a little bit better feeling about that. But I just don't, I have really big concerns when we come in and start telling people this is what's going to be good for us, so this is what you should do. I think that they should be able to decide on their own whether it's good for them to be in Benson or not. And that's ultimately my feeling.
Sir?
I agree with with Christine, and then furthermore, I'd rather sit and see what Benson wants to do to begin
And
with.
I think that's
It's
a
their
good point,
town.
too.
I know when we had a resolution brought before us for Douglas and things that were going on down at the border, that was one of the biggest one of our biggest reasons for not acting was we're putting the cart before the horse. If the city didn't come to us asking for support, why are we telling them they should or shouldn't do something? And that's why we didn't do the resolution with, for Douglas in that aspect. And I think the same thing applies here. From not talking to Benson, not hearing from Benson saying, hey, stand behind us or stand for us, then we're not just telling the company how to run, but we're telling another city how to run without request from that city. And I know if Douglas or Benson came to us in that same aspect, I would be insulted or upset. I'd rather go to them if we need help and vice versa. So I kind of agree with Christine on this.
And of course, I disagree with that way of thinking. First of all, I don't believe we're telling them what to do. We're telling them what we would like to see happen. And they, of course, can stand back and disagree if they wish and not pass their own resolution. I did gather from what Mr. Liebman said that because of the pandemic, for Richard, it was easier to talk to the Douglas City Council. And because Mr. Liebman lives here and works here, it was easier for him to approach us first. So I don't quite understand telling them what to do, telling a company how to operate. We're simply essentially asking them to please consider running your train 5 days a week or weekly, 5 days a week, daily to our area. And I would just add, we support them if that's the decision they are making as Amtrak. We support that. We're very happy as a community to see you coming to our area daily, because our hope, and this is further down the road, I think, that you'll be bringing people who will come into our community and, dare I say, spend your money. No, that's not what I mean. I mean, enjoy the beauty of our area and see the hummingbirds. And so it's not really about telling anybody what to do. It's simply saying, should you choose to do this, we'd be very, very happy to see it happen. So that's my point of view on the matter.
If you're looking for consensus, if
That's
it
what I'm
sounds like
looking
that's what you're looking for, I'm in favor with going forward on this. I read the resolution again, and all we're doing is saying that we support this effort. It's not saying you will do this. It's just saying we support and we call upon congressional and state legislative delegations to promote it and to look at it. So I don't have an issue with this at all.
Ladies?
Pretty simple.
After the comments, I reread it too. Like, are we telling anybody? But I agree with Mayor Pro Tem and Councilmember Calhoun.
Ms. Pacheco, comments?
I like that you did go talk to, who did you talk to in Benson?
Well, this is history. I haven't called, I obviously gonna call the mayor
Yeah. Talk to
tomorrow
Judy.
and say, this is what's going on.
That'd be helpful.
What do you think? And if he tells me full stop, then I'm probably not gonna be voting for it, and I'll share that information with you guys beforehand. Well, my inclination is, in Benson, as focused as they are with the Railroad Museum, and they actually used to run a little tourist train down the San Pedro to the Apache power plant and back. I have a feeling that there will be support.
I think they'll be happy about it. I just was curious if they had,
But I will make
They
a
do
comment.
have
I will call the mayor, if not tonight, tomorrow.
their little rail stop, cafe and
Oh, no,
all
they've
that.
got a
They
park
like
and everything
trains
else.
in
Yeah,
Benson. Yeah.
museum.
Yeah, they do have that, so. It doesn't hurt to say that we support something that we're not.
When?
That's okay.
I
Okay,
am
so
curious on
what we'll
their
do is we'll leave
comments.
this on the agenda for Thursday. If it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So, good luck, guys. Okay. Next, at the meeting on Thursday, we'll have the call of the public and the comments and requests from council. And I'm gonna change the order that's in your list there. Since we have two departing council members, we'll start with Ms. Pacheco, go to Mr. Benning, Get Ms. Humphrey, the mayor pro tem, then we'll have Ms. Wolf and Ms. Calhoun with, so they can do the closing remarks, and then I'll do my remarks in the presentation.
Short.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
it's fine. Shorter is better when it comes to
Please bring a
remarks.
box of tissue with you.
Okay, so we got through item A and B. And item C, Chuck, is the presentation of the proposed minor amendments to the tribute. And that is gonna be
Well,
Mr.
I'll
McLaughlin.
just do a little warm-up for Matt here is going to go into the particulars, and we appreciate Mr. Kaufman and representatives from Castle and Cook being here as well. This is the culmination of about a year's worth of discussions that have been going on with regards to the tribute specific plan, and another thing that dates back to 2006. So a lot of things have changed over that time, and now
Maria?
that
Maria? Well, excuse me, Chuck. Go ahead.
Anyway, now that, it looks like Castle and Cook is ready to proceed with development, we thought it was a good idea to review the plan and see what made sense going forward, and propose any changes that might be beneficial to both parties. So even though this fits within the scope of the prior agreement and doesn't necessarily require a vote of the city council, I felt it was important to bring the changes to you guys for discussion, and if you have any input to please share that with us, and then we would work out any other changes that needed to be made with Castle and Cook. So Matt's going to have all the specifics with regards to the changes in his presentation as soon as they pull it up here.
Sorry, it was inadvertently shut down.
Well, I just want to make a couple comments too. There have been some changes. In addition to the fact that the town hasn't grown as fast as it was growing at the time this was made, and that has an impact on this as well. I sat in on all but 3 of the negotiations for the original plan. We did not have a lot of input at that time from the school board, and you can see that some of the items dealing with the school properties are in there as well. And we have talked to the school board this time, so that's an improvement right there. And I'm looking forward to your presentation.
You took all my talking points. I was gonna say, yeah, I mean,
Say ditto.
it did take us a year to hammer out the final version of the proposed amendments, and I think I could explain them to you in under 15. So with that, we did go cover to cover through the document. There were some minor amendments that we reached consensus on relative to the distribution of parks and open space, the size and scope of the town center, repurposing redundant public school sites, reclassifying a couple of roads to be consistent with our current traffic circulation plan, and the need to adjust the phasing plan to provide better guidance on required public infrastructure and facility improvements at the planning area level. And Chuck is right. Interestingly, we issued more permits for single family in 2005 and 2006 than the last 10 years combined. So there have been a lot of changes since this was first approved. It has been determined that the nature and scope of the amendments are within the administrative approval authority outlined in Chapter 8 of the plan, and any feedback you provide will be factored into the final version. So let's get into it. The tribute-specific plan covers 3 square miles of semi-desert grassland east of 92 between BST and the mall. The maximum number of homes that was approved in the original plan remains the same at 6,959 units, or about 3.6 dwelling units per acre on an overall basis. So its size is like a small city within the city. I've created a series of slides that illustrates and describe the changes by functional area. The first section that we revisited was the open space plan. The decentralized model of having a mini park at the center of each neighborhood creates some concerns from a future O&M perspective, and we wanted to explore how the overall system could be improved. So each tree symbol on this graphic represents a 1 to 3 acre pocket park, 16 in total. The proposed plan replaces these pocket parks with 5 larger 3 to 4 acre neighborhood parks. To give you a sense of scale, Chaparral Village Park is 3 acres. More significantly, the 2 large community parks were added at the opposite ends of the Lewis Springs Linear Park. This will provide needed recreational assets on the south end of town. OS 3 on the west end is about 22 acres, and OS 8 on the east end is 29 acres. They will feature both active and passive recreational facilities and serve as locations for potential community events and festivals. And there's about a 1.6 acre or 1.7 mile distance in between. You can see it's a highly connected park system with the neighborhoods. Moving on to land use, this is the current adopted land use plan. What we wanted to emphasize is the town center component. And so they are redesignated for mixed use development to better communicate the intent. The core of the town center is envisioned for MU1 and 2 fronting St. Andrews Drive. Standalone high-density residential uses will likely remain the principal uses of MU3 and 4, but with the added flexibility of accommodating mixed-use or ancillary commercial development. If the core of the town center shifts to the east, or market opportunities arise in the future for retail and restaurant uses to take advantage of the park setting. The 62-acre increase in park and open space category is a byproduct of eliminating the 2 future school sites from the plan, number 5 and number 9 on the legend. It was determined through consultation with the school district that only 1 elementary school site is needed to accommodate the projected school enrollment in the TSP area. The amendments stipulate that should the unified school district choose not to build an elementary school on the 10-acre site depicted as PF1 on the corner of St. Andrews Drive and Avenida del Sol, after the residential areas of the tribute-specific plan have reached 50% of the build-out capacity, the site will be made available to the city at no cost for public facility use, such as a public library, civic center, or emergency substation. The next chart is a land use summary that shows the changes by category. Again, the important point here to emphasize is the maximum residential build-out remains the same with no change to the target dwelling unit count. There are a few adjustments to the development standards. With respect to the low-density residential category, we're recommending that the minimum lot dimensions be enlarged to reflect the desired density of the category. The current dimensions reflect more a urban development pattern that's more conducive to the medium and high-density land use categories. Also, to better accommodate the mixed-use building format, we're recommending that the maximum height limit be converted from feet to stories to allow for taller ceiling heights on the ground floor retail uses and provide better building architecture. When mixed-use residential projects are well-designed, they can provide for good quality housing and an active and vibrant commercial street. There's still a large question mark as to whether there is adequate market demand to support this type of development in the current setting, but it's important to remember that this is a long-range plan that needs to be able to respond to future changes in a manner that supports the community goals and aspirations. Okay, so there will be a couple changes to the traffic circulation plan. A 100-foot wide 5-lane arterial roadway would create a wedge between neighborhoods and would be detrimental to the desired character of the development. A 2-lane residential collector with on-street parking or bike lanes along the curb lines is the appropriate classification for Avenida del Sol and Avenida Cochise. which is consistent with the current traffic circulation plan in Vista 2030. This change will provide for a safer and more attractive street capable of carrying the projected traffic volumes. As I said before, the market outlook is still murky in how and when this build-out will proceed. The original phasing plan called for the TSP area to be subdivided into 4 units. We know that the eventual construction will be in smaller increments. As the phasing plan is used for concurrency purposes, it's important that we have an established document on how the required improvements will be phased in at a sub-area level. Castle and Cook will be obligated to provide the city for our approval an itemized list of improvements related to the development of each planning area and the TSP prior to the first site plan or subdivision plat application being made. The infrastructure matrix will eliminate the need for negotiating improvements on a project-by-project basis down the road by crystallizing expectations up front. I just want to end by giving credit to the original author and team involved in developing this specific plan. I can tell a lot of time and expense went into its creation. Based on the resolution history, as the mayor pointed out, it's a well-vetted document. Castle and Cook is a very civic-minded development partner who was very fair-minded throughout the negotiation. With that, Castle and Cook is here, and I as well, to respond to any questions you may have.
Before I open it up to questions, I want to ask Mr. Kaufman, is there anything you want to say before we open it up to the council? No. Okay. Mr. Matuchik?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out a couple of other items that we are working on, and you know, our team included Victoria and Matt, obviously, and Ms. Lassar, because there were a number of issues with regard to drainage and water that needed to be addressed as part of this process as well. The original plan called for a package sewage treatment plant to be in it. You know, by looking at the numbers and projected growth, the team was able to determine with Castle and Cook that a package plant would probably not be needed at the site, which of course brings down quite a bit of the expenses associated with that, and we should be able to easily handle projected effluent at our current environmental operations park. Also, with the improvements that Castle and Cook has made with regards to watering the golf course at Pueblo del Sol, the need to treat it at that package plant site and then pump it back uphill to the golf course was probably deemed unnecessary as well because of the improvements in conservation that you've made with the water sense standards and future housing development. So that was very important. Also important was where the effluent and surface water runoff was going to be conveyed to, and we're trying in this plan to convey, both the effluent, of course, to the EOP to assist with the river in the future and any potential negotiations or talks we may have with the federal government with regards to water, and of course trying to bring the surface water runoff closer to the river as well in this plan. So those things were all accomplished as well as part of this negotiation, and we appreciate Castle and Cook working with us on that. We're trying to use the science that we have gained over the past 10 to 15 years in order to better make use of that water resource in this process.
Thank you, Mr. Matuchik. Questions, comments? Ma'am?
Excuse me, so trying to see. I swallowed water wrong earlier, and now I can't talk. So you don't want, there's not going to be any main arterial roads in the whole plan? Yes, that's what I'm trying to find out.
What kind of?
The minor arterial roadways would be Buffalo Soldier Trail to provide east-west movement, as well as Schrader Road. provide north-south movements.
As you wanted to take out Avenida del Sol and Avenida Cochise, the extension of the two as arterial roads, correct?
So the two highlighted segments are proposed to be amended from minor arterial to residential collector. A minor arterial is designed to handle more than 10,000 vehicles per day. Residential collector between 5 and 10,000. We think that the proposed classification, which is consistent with the traffic circulation plan, will be more than adequate to accommodate the projected traffic. And just to give you a benchmark, Avenida Cochise, I guess it would be west of Home Depot, is under 10,000 trips per day.
And for context, that's
Yeah.
West of
on the side of the mall, or
I mean, east of the mall.
towards east of the mall. Okay, so going down into.
Yeah, I looked at
Chaparral.
all the, even Avenida del Sol is carrying less than, is designed and built as a minor arterial, but is below the 10,000 vehicle threshold. And again, we don't want to create a giant wedge, a 100-foot wedge that's going to bifurcate the neighborhoods. We want to keep it consistent with the traditional neighborhood design that is the predicate to the plan.
I guess the concern that I had on that was just that the Schrader Road area is phase 4, right? In which could be 15, 20 years in the future. I don't know, a long time from now. And to not have, to not have that north-south movement, or a good stream for north-south movement prior.
More than likely, most vehicles will be exiting out onto 92 to go north-south.
Yeah.
Or in the future, Avenida del Sol.
Right. And the good thing is there are plenty of options because of the connectivity that the plan
Yeah, there's good
provides.
connectivity throughout.
Think of like Foothills Drive or St. Andrews Drive. Although because of the collector status, no driveways will be able to connect. So you're going to have continuous flow.
Okay.
You finished, Ms. Pacheco?
Yeah, I think so. For now, I'm just. Oh, what do you mean by the city center? I guess. Can you kind of
Town center concept.
or downtown?
Oh.
Yeah, can you kind of explain that concept to me a little bit?
Okay, it's featured in the city's general plan, Vista 2030. During the Dream Your City planning process, there was a public desire to see an alternative to the, suburban commercial strip form of development that predominates in the city, where you have single uses principally oriented to a major arterial. In a town center format, it's more compact, it's more walkable, similar to the tenets we're trying to achieve with the West Fry Boulevard redevelopment. Although right now it's pretty much 100% commercial. In a mixed-use development format, you can have residential uses either incorporated into the project, either within the same district or as part of the building itself. So it could be vertically mixed use or horizontally mixed use. And what you want to achieve is what's called not only the mixing, but also sufficient building mass to create the vitality and energy that a town center needs. And public spaces are very important within that setting, so a high level of building and landscape architecture is required to bring people in and create the environment that's going to foster the economic vitality of the town center. And what's great is the community park that was added as a potential anchor and catalyst for, again, drawing in the public to not only enjoy that amenity, but also perhaps take advantage of the town center, which is in close walking distance. So I can see a synergy between community festivals and the businesses taking place in the future, should this plan be realized. What's the project in Phoenix? The
Verado.
Verado. It's, I think, in
Beautiful.
Bullhead?
Up at the White Tank Mountains.
Buckeye? Is that?
Yeah.
In Buckeye. So if you Google search Verado, that's the template that they are looking at in terms of influencing
That's
the
fantastic.
future of this town center project.
That's a beautiful neighborhood up there. I love just to drive to the Verado area. It's right at the foothills of the White Tank Mountains, if they're mountains, those high hills on the west end of Phoenix, or Buckeye, I guess it is. I was curious about those two roads in yellow on the map that you have up. There are bike paths on those roads?
Either on-street parking or bike paths, or it could be both. The cross-section provides for either or. So it could be like last recess.
Oh, right,
Where we just
okay.
added the bike lanes.
Good.
Right.
I think that's going to be very important to the community for those bike paths connecting those parks. And that strip, I'm not quite understanding that
The little finger
strip.
pointing to the east? Like this?
It goes from past Schrader all the way down to the bottom of St. Andrews to MU3. What is that? Snake? This right here.
Oh,
That's
is
a drainage, and that'll be a park, it'll be a parkway.
That's
That's
going
a
to be
long-
converted
That's
into
existing
the
wash.
Lewis Springs Linear Park.
Yeah.
Okay, to
There's going to be a
linear.
multi-use path that runs along the south side.
Oh, fantastic.
Connect the
Fantastic.
two parks,
Like Garden Canyon.
two big parks.
Uh-huh.
Much better.
Connecting the two
Yeah.
parks,
Two
those
big
two
parks.
red circles. Okay, wow. Will I be able to enjoy that neighborhood? Will it be done before, well, I can still enjoy it? That's just kidding, just kidding. You don't.
Myself the same.
I was gonna say, you don't have to answer that. But I do understand this is a long-term project. I think that was it for my, oh, no, I had one other one. And I may have asked this before, does this encompass housing from a low end to a very high end? Is that how it's designed?
Yeah.
Okay, well, there are a variety of densities that are being provided by the plan. So the smaller lots will probably more than likely be the more affordable product.
Okay.
And then the low-density areas will probably have larger homes, more
That-
square footage.
That
and-
high, medium, low, that's density. And
Right.
generally, the higher density, generally, the
Bigger
lower
homes
the-
will go on the bigger lots, more than likely. I don't want to speak for the developer, but yeah, there's a correlation between price and land size.
Does that include any apartment-type homes, or is it all single-family residential? I mean, in the residential neighborhoods, does that include apartments?
The apartments will go into the mixed use and
Okay.
multifamily, the H4 or H1 through H4 areas.
Uh-huh.
And the multifamily may include for sale or rental, depending on the market, correct?
Yes.
Sale or rental?
And more than likely, Castle and Cook wouldn't be the developer of that product, right?
We'll do
Okay.
some, likely.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, thank you.
Ms. Carolyn?
Okay, thank you. When you say under the proposed amendments, roadway classifications, and it says smaller size residential streets will promote walkability, are you talking about the minor turn into collector on the map, or are you actually talking about the little red arrows, the residential streets being more narrow? Because
Yeah, in fact,
it doesn't
above
reflect
the
in the.
cross sections that are in the plan. If we can
Those are
display
the
those.
same from 2006, though.
Right.
So they're not
So-
smaller. So under proposed amendments, it wouldn't be, it's not anything we're changing now.
We're changing the classification, so, are we back to the yellow line streets?
Yes, I thought
Okay.
maybe it's not, maybe you didn't mean residential streets, maybe you were talking about these minors turning to collectors. Is that what you meant with that?
Right. So the functional classification in the current plan is minor arterial. That's 100 feet wide, 5 lanes.
I know.
Okay.
I'm just saying the
sorry, I
wording
missed
is
your
kind of
question.
misleading because it says smaller size residential streets.
Right.
And the residential streets are in red and the little arrows, but we're not actually changing
Oh,
those.
No, that
I
was
was
in the
just,
original plan, Matt.
I was trying to describe in lay terms,
Yeah.
it was, instead of functional classification.
And I got all excited.
Okay.
And got, I'm like, we're do narrow
Cross-section
streets.
of the
Right.
streets are smaller than
Right.
city.
And I
Okay.
was like, oh,
Poor
it's
choice
not-
of
Okay,
description.
just so,
Sorry.
okay. I was hoping I was wrong, but okay. And then I did want to ask about water. On page 73, we had someone striked out water reuse. But we still keep it mentioned that they are doing water harvesting and water reuse, and that they are going to have to incorporate water harvesting since we're not doing a plant.
Well, between 2006 and now, in 2006, actually, this was a pretty far-reaching plan, and we were looking at things like gray water reuse and those kind of things. A lot of technology and things have changed over that time, but probably the most significant thing the council has done between 2006 and now is adopt the EPA water sense standards. So you have the highest level of water conservation in your development for housing in the state of Arizona with that. And of course, Castle and Cook is agreeing to go ahead and follow those standards.
So, did you mean to not strike it out on 73, or do we need to go and make it consistent throughout the rest
You
of the
can have to,
document?
you need to tell us what is 73.
Yeah,
what
I don't think we have
Oh,
that.
I'm
Document-
sorry.
What document are you talking about?
Let me find out. This little scrolly thing. Okay. It's under the concept plan goal 8-2.
Of what?
For this,
Of what
the
document?
30, the,
Must be the strikeout and underlined version that was posted to the web.
isn't that?
Oh, we don't have it here. is
Yeah,
why.
right.
Okay, we
Okay.
don't have it in
Isn't that
our
our
strategic
strategic, so
plan?
we don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. So there's this section. I don't know. How do you?
Isn't that in our?
Okay.
And it says the tribute specific
plan.
plan includes water conservation, comma, water reuse, and water augmentation measures. But they cross out water reuse. But then they still say they're doing water reuse, like 8 more times.
Okay. So
Need to get that.
Well, reuse probably refers to, treating it, using it on the golf course or using it on the landscaping that was originally in the original plan. Since the package plan is not in anymore, we won't be reusing it that way because the better use of the effluent, now that we've learned, is to recharge it at the EOP and bring it closer to the river. So that's probably why that strike is there.
So then we need to make it consistent. We need to
be
do that.
consistent.
to
But
the rest.
we'll go through the document and see.
Yeah, and I understood that because it said in Appendix C that if we decide they're not getting a package plant, then they have to harvest water. So I know that it's either, but yeah, we'll have to just fix it. And then I don't know if I have any other notes because this was a very thorough document. Like a lot of my questions got answered the more I read. So I don't think I have anything else.
Okay. Anything on this side? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. So just a couple of things as I do commend whoever originally did this because relative to the times, there are very few changes. So I think that's actually great that we were looking ahead and thinking through these things. Inevitably, when we start talking about tribute, as Mr. Kaufman and everyone in this room knows, we start getting the criticisms of 7,000 buildings going up and the market not being able to.
69.59.
Well, we always, yes, sorry.
Pet peeve,
Always
sorry.
going up. I'd just like to address that and make it understood that all this build out is contingent upon market conditions, and we're not going to be putting up 59 houses tomorrow or even in the next 20 years without the market calling for it. So it's really just a comment more than anything. It's just to be clear on that.
Anything else?
Nope.
Well,
Sir.
I'm sorry. I do have one more question.
Mr. Kaufman was. He was. I think he
Mr.
was
Kaufman,
coming.
did you have you want to comment?
The only thing that I was going to add to
We got to get you on the mic.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Gray, the only thing I wanted to add to that is this nearly 3 square miles, as Matt was indicating, really represents the future of Sierra Vista. It is virtually all of the developable land that this community has forever. So unless the fort goes away and that turns into something else. But given what we know today, this is it. So that 6959 represents not something that's going to be airdropped onto this acreage anytime soon. It will simply develop as time and the market demands. But it does represent the future of the community, and that's of course the spirit in which all of us have worked on this for a very long time. So we're the owners and stewards and developers of the land, but we're all involved in its future. So anyway, I'd be happy to answer anything else as long as I'm standing up here, but I'd be happy to leave also. So.
Ma'am?
No, I just found. Never mind.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So my unless you got something.
No, sir.
My only question is, okay, next steps. We've been briefed. We know it's there are minor changes. What are our requirements to proceed, or is this briefing council is it?
This, in terms of formal meetings with you, this
or
this
approval
is it.
or anything else?
Yeah. There's
Okay.
no other approval needed.
Okay, so minor changes. We don't vote on this. Not required to vote on it.
No.
Because it's not a new development.
Okay.
Right?
That was envisioned in the original plan.
We can make amendments. Okay. So.
Did find that on page 156 that he's allowed to approve all these changes. It was a very thorough document.
Okay, so we've been briefed. Thank you guys, Mr. Kaufman and your team for being here today. Appreciate that. Next item is the executive report. Mr. Petitia.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you have before you the latest and greatest executive report. I do want to mention, I did mention that we would start putting in the reports of your boards and commissions and future ones. That didn't make this particular one, so you'll start seeing that in your next report. So everybody is aware of that. From my perspective, in terms of what we've been doing, today we met with the garrison commander, and of course, there are a number of issues going on related to COVID on Fort Huachuca. That's not in the report, but it's something that will be mentioned. There will be some school closures, and although the annual exodus of troops will continue, and they're preparing for that, the post will effectively be shut down. I believe tomorrow is the date that they're looking at for shutting down pretty much everything and requiring everybody to work from home and that kind of thing. So we got that going on. And CCOM, obviously, Mr. Smith has left, and Commander Heiser is taking over CCOM. And we just got news yesterday that the sheriff has hired a new chief of staff to replace Mr. Smith, and that's the former Pima County sheriff, Mark Napier will be moving here from Pima County. So that will be going on as well. So a number of things, they're not necessarily listed in this report. Those are some of the things that we're working with right now.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Petitia on his report?
And then, of course, staff is here to answer any questions specific.
Questions for Mr. Petitia? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I do have questions, but mostly comments. I I think it's great how successful the video was of the spotlight. It's
Breakfast.
not a breakfast.
Breakfast.
Okay, it's still a breakfast. Okay. I watched it at nighttime.
Even though we didn't serve food.
I ain't getting no food.
Okay. But 16,000 people, well, almost 16,000 people watching it when normally, I mean, you do pack a room, but what, it's like a
Not more
100 people.
than a couple hundred, yeah.
Yeah, so it just has me thinking we need to strongly figure out how we can incorporate.
Well, assuming COVID allows next year, when the Spotlight Breakfast comes out, we have had some brief discussions about, the success of the video, and probably behooves us maybe to somehow combine the two, or do a little bit of both, to have a film part of the breakfast, and then maybe incorporate that, but still be able to then get it out to the general public as well, so.
I'm glad you were thinking of that too, because it's really, especially all the positive feedback and all those people knowing that the city's in a good place and all these things are happening that they wouldn't have known if we were doing the traditional breakfast.
Not only that, I wouldn't have to talk as long.
And that's another thing. All the directors talking about their own departments, I think you should consider doing that as well, since no one talks about their department like them. I think they did a great job on that.
Absolutely.
And then I had a question for Chief for the reporting systems. Oh, I hope I gotta talk this way though. So I appreciate the heads up because we're probably gonna see higher crime rates, right? If it's
What you'll see
reporting
through, right, what you'll see through NIBRS, which is the National Incident-Based Reporting System, is well, currently right now under UCR, there's usually multiple offenses. And the example that I use here that they use with the FBI as a homicide might also include an aggravated assault or a robbery or a burglary. What gets reported to the FBI is only the highest level of classification for that particular crime. Now they'll all be reported. Okay, so what you'll typically see is increases in ag assaults and that kind of stuff, because those are lower level crime. That's part of that incident. So that was just kind of a heads up. You'll start seeing a little bit of a spike regarding that kind of activity, even though those things had been charged and those things had already occurred. It just wasn't reported in the FBI statistics.
And when we start seeing the graphs, you give us the graphs and the executive reports, they're gonna start.
I am still trying to figure out how to do that so that, because it's an apples and oranges comparison. Mm-hmm. Whether we start over and start doing that, we have the historical stuff or not. I'm still trying to debate how to show that comparison. There's a reason why in the report I always show you calls for service, because the calls for service actually reflects that multiple cases going on. So you always see those calls for service are always a lot more than what the actual UCR reporting is. So that's why that calls for service report regarding the different crimes is trying to get you that perspective that those other things do occur within that. But I'm still trying to figure out how to do the so that you guys can see the comparison. But it's not it is an apples and oranges really when you get the systems.
So you're not sure if we're gonna start seeing the NIBRS numbers or if you want to keep it.
We do have to do the NIBRS numbers.
I mean, in our report.
Right, and we won't have the UCR because once we start reporting NIBRS, the UCR will be shut off. So it'll only be the NIBRS.
So we'll only have that comprehensive, more comprehensive.
It's much more comprehensive though, in terms of the number of crimes reported.
And then, okay, so if somebody, what if it's all the same crime? Like some guy, everyone's at an event and he breaks into 10 different cars. Does that get reported as one, or does
it gets reported as one with multiple victims now instead of individual reports, individual calls for service? It would get reported as one incident with multiple victims, typically. Now, I'd have to go look specifically for what you just described, say in a bunch of vehicle burglaries, but usually it's typically like, let's say it's a domestic violence incident and there's multiple victims, say spouse and children. Each one would be an individual victim with an individual report. Now it'll just be one report with multiple victims.
One incident.
One
multiple
incident
victims.
with multiple victims.
Okay. And I like the way the visitor center really, the way it looks really welcoming, and I think it's a good use of that big space back there. And then hopefully we can see locations in other places where maybe visitors just naturally are more frequent than, I don't know how many people. I know we have a lot of visitors there that make it over there, but I never knew about it until I was here for like 10 years. So maybe satellite locations throughout the city, since we're doing such a good job with that
We
one.
need to advertise it more.
Well, and that's one thing, we do have signs. I went over there today and looked at it, and it's a great display, and they've set it up well. It's welcoming, it's bright, it's attractive, and we really need a museum with that attached to it on the entrance to the city. But that's $5 million plus, so we can talk about that in our upcoming strategic plan.
And I want to thank all the departments for taking the time to give us our commission updates since things changed, and I appreciated that. I'm very excited to see Tombstone Brewery and Pub moving to the West End, and Dutch Brothers, maybe? They have a secret menu, and it's really awesome, so I hope, yeah, that's exciting.
It was a secret.
It was a secret. Yes.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, who else? Sir.
Okay. So I won't rehash everything Carolyn said. I did want to make one comment on the police departments. And this might be, like you said, we're seeing more calls because of the new system, you said, right?
Not yet. We're doing a dual reporting right now on a test base, but it doesn't change the calls for service at the moment.
Well, I'm just curious, like, we're seeing it as, we had just trended an increase in mental health calls for service.
Right, and that's mainly, most of those were check welfares, and I think it's partly because of that, during that phase of the pandemic, people at home, people calling in, they're not in contact. We're getting calls from employers now looking, haven't had contact with people, or even now that school started up, we're getting calls to check on schools where kids aren't checking into the school system and those kind of things. So there's a whole combination of stuff with that check welfare that I think is related to the pandemic at the moment.
Okay, that's good to know. And then I did my comment, before I get to that, I will say, for the fire department, that, like, I put Wednesday as literally hump day, but you get a big increase in calls on Wednesdays? Like every Wednesday, you just always get an increase in calls? That's so weird. Like, why Wednesday?
That's when the good-looking firemen are on duty, that's probably why.
It's the only time they work.
Like, the graph looks like this, it's literally hump day, it's like
Yeah.
Wednesday, they all call for the fire department.
Mayor Mueller, Councilmember Pacheco, yeah, it's just the way the calls fall. There's no rhyme or reason to it, and historically, maybe hump day does something to people, but we don't have any other reason for it other than that, no.
Don't call him on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then, on that, I wanted to just say to you, I'm excited about the Firefighters Toy Drive. Last year, the Firefighters Toy Drive helped, I know some of our pantry kids, one of them who was living in a car, and they were teenagers, and so helped us get this family in a hotel over Christmas, because they were living in their vehicle. So anyways, really good project. I'm glad you guys do that.
Well, thank you, and I would just like to mention that we are at currently 160 applicants. We are opening it up again this Friday and Saturday, and we're looking to probably be about 2 to 220, which will probably reflect about 700 kids.
So give a quick plug for how we can donate toys and money and whatever else.
Yeah, any fire station, come on down and donate. We'll give you a receipt. And also the next 2 Wednesdays, we'll be in the Schlotsky's parking lot from 4 to 6 o'clock. Have a drive-through for if you don't even have to get out of your car. We'll take your presents and take your money, and we'll spend it on the age groups that we have a hard time getting donations for.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I love that project. And then my comment on Dutch Brothers Coffee. I hadn't heard of it or I didn't know they were coming until I read the report. But as far as that parking lot, as it's grown, that shopping center has grown and grown. Like the flow into and out of it is all going in that one entrance in the side. It's like terrible as far as traffic goes, and I don't know if there's any looking at that. And
Well, they have to have a site plan approved, and there'll be a process to do that with the planning and zoning. If you want to touch on that, Matt.
Yeah, I'll just say that the proposed out parcel will be located on the bypass side, so the entryway will be where you go into Cal Ranch and Hobby Lobby side, and that's a different owner than the Larson Baker piece that's been redeveloped with Shoe Encore, Planet Fitness,
and Ulta,
which is highly trafficked, and the
Yeah,
Traffic
it
Safety
is.
Committee has met and discussed the ingress and egress of that driveway access and the potential need in the future should the other side of the street develop for potential traffic signals. So.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah,
they're working on it, is the
It's
answer.
like icky, right?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Just a little bit more perspective on the Plaza Vista Mall site. I mean, obviously, when Walmart left and we had the recession, Plaza Vista Mall was looking pretty poorly. So this has been a real success story in terms of redevelopment for the community, and hopefully that'll extend to the mall later as well. But part of the process has been the main owner is parceling off these parcels to other owners, and we recognize that it's creating some traffic circulation issues and access issues now, and basically we need to talk to the original owner if they're planning to do that again, because what's really going to be needed is a traffic signal on the east side Charleston Road entrance, and I've already asked Public Works staff to because we'll be doing an overlay at Charleston Road to put the infrastructure in for a future traffic signal there. Now, implementation of that signal will probably be dependent on either traffic conditions or the development of Croce's Crossroads in the future. But there should be some contribution from developers towards that signal. But we should put the infrastructure, underground infrastructure in before we do the overlay, so we don't have to cut into that. So that's really what's going on with the traffic circulation there.
Thank you for that. And let's see. I was going to ask that. I don't know if it's code enforcement or community development has to encourage utility signups using door hangers. We have a large population not using utilities, or
Yeah, this is a new responsibility that we've recently taken on to help out the finance department. So when there's a change in ownership or tenancy on a property, a new renter moves in, they don't always know to set up an account with the city, and we don't always know on our end that the change has occurred. So when a bill is in arrears for a certain period of time, I think it's like 3 months, that's when we're consulted and we go make contact with the tenant or the property owner to let them know to come in to sign up for utility service. And it's been very effective, the door hanger method. It seems to grab their attention better than a letter in the mail.
Yeah.
Probably like me, I throw out most of the mail I receive as junk, so it just gets dismissed, but people do notice the door hangers, and they've been highly effective, so we are recouping that funding that's been in arrears, so bringing those accounts current.
Okay. That's what I was
Matt put that in a very nice way, by the way.
He did. He did.
Politically correct.
Did very well.
And then I'm curious on the checkout Wi-Fi hotspots for the library. Are we doing any kind of cooperation with school district on that? Since I know they're parking school buses with Wi-Fi hotspots in some neighborhoods, but they can't be everywhere. So I don't know if that's been a conversation.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember Pacheco. Our Wi-Fi, we have not done any coordination. They're open to the public. They're not earmarked for students specific, but as soon as they come in, they go out again. It's extremely popular. They can keep them for up to 2 weeks, and then they're really cool because if they don't come in on time, they just stop working. It's linked to your card, so there's no there's no incentive to continue to keep it, and people have been doing a really good job. And we have gotten quite a bit of feedback from families with children in school who have needed that, and it's been a great service. So we hope to expand it in the future too.
Okay, thank you. I was curious about that. I think that's all of the question that I had. So, on that.
Thank you. Next.
Me. Oh, is it me? Oh, I just wanted to say, not a question. I wanted to comment about how active, especially library, has been throughout this pandemic. And the most recent thing that I was aware of was the take-home projects. To me, that's just major, and I hope you're having a lot of good success with that program, because just keeping people engaged that way, not only with life, but with the city, I think is very important, and they understand that the city cares, and the Wi-Fi is one way, this is one way, and the many other projects that you're doing. So I just want to say thank you for those people who are taking advantage of that. And the Hank Hauser Museum also is doing some amazing things. Particularly, I thought was smart was that project with the Sports Center and having the history project. And I also want to comment that, oh shoot, now her name has escaped me, the curator. Pardon me?
Ms. Rosick.
Rosick, yeah. Spoke to my club, and she's just so enthusiastic and so smart that that's going to bode very well for the community. So, thanks.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I just have a couple of very quick things. So just to the different department heads, Matt, those abatements look fantastic on Maccabee Street. It's quite amazing how just making a blank slate out of something gives it a whole new look and makes it look presentable for our community. And then on the DSIPS grant, I know we've talked about that a lot, and that would be the one for the airport, the substation. As I was on I watched the pop-up meeting on the American Defense Communities, and I just wanted to give a kudos to Tony. He was on that panel, and not only did he, of course, represent Sierra Vista very well, but one of the panelists was from the Office of the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Army, who specializes in BRAC, and he literally could not stop talking about this project and how great it was of the use of this grant, more so than any of the other projects. Every time he mentioned it, he would just say, that's such a great project, and I'm really glad that we're using it this way. So again, just represented Sierra Vista very well. So thank you to Tony for that. That's all I got.
Sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Then, Chuck, I guess you're off the hook for this month. We'll get you in a couple months on the executive report. Item E, report on recent trips, meetings, and future meetings. I did attend a Zoom meeting with the Rural Transportation Advisory Committee, and all they talked about was what we need to do to make recommendations for the legislature next year on trying to get roads and highways funded. And that was basically the half-hour meeting. So, other than that, I've got nothing on current future meetings. Anybody else?
So we had the phone call meeting, very brief phone call meeting with the San Pedro, Upper San Pedro Partnership.
Yeah, we did have the administrative, I call it the administrative meeting, but the Upper San Pedro Partnership did meet. The only things of significance on the agenda were the nominations for appointments for the chair and the vice chair. And by their bylaws, the election doesn't happen until the first meeting of the year, which I think is in February.
Yep.
So that'll come up, and that was pretty much it for the meeting. Anything else? Okay. Future discussion items and council requests. Hopefully, we've got a lot of them done today, the future items.
Covered everything.
Any other things other than we do need to know that we're gonna have with the new council, we'll have a planning session and strategic planning session, et cetera.
I'm
Coming
working
up.
on the dates for all of those, Mayor.
Okay.
Oh, is this gonna be on Thursday?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that during my section.
Very sweet. I
At the
like
end.
That proclamation.
Yeah, it's be a proclamation, thanks to our good councilwoman. Okay, Chuck, you wanna give us city status for city facilities and stuff for COVID-19, what's changed, what's going on?
Well, very quickly, Mr. Mayor, there's really no change, obviously, and if you've seen Adam's reports and all that, the number of cases countywide and in our area have been increasing. We're aware of some potential shortages of space at the hospital and that kind of thing. So with regards to staff and facilities, we're going to maintain our posture of having the buildings closed. I think we'll probably be in that posture at least until the vaccine is widely distributed and available, and then we will see where we're at that time. So we're probably still looking at a couple of months of being in a similar position that we're in right now. So,
And that's something I'm gonna address too on Thursday. I don't think a lot of people realize that even if we have the immunizations available next week and they go to I've looked at the priorities that the
we
state
have
is
the
putting out.
priority. We just got the priority list.
And basically, it's healthcare workers, et cetera, and it's a logical sequence in the first priority. But again, if you're talking a immunization that you go get your shot, it's 21 days before you get your second shot, and it's gonna take another 3 days to a week before those things are effective. So we're talking at least a month if you're the first person. So if we start on the 15th, we're talking 15 January before those people have their immunity built up, and that'll cascade, and it's going to be, they've already got the numbers decided on which states are getting what, and so it'll be a very big logistical exercise to get the stuff at the right time to the right people at the right place and make sure they come back 21 days later within the time frame, et cetera. So we're going to be in this process probably till mid-March or later before the average citizen gets their immunization. So I would encourage everybody to be, you follow the masking, the sanitation, the separation, all those things that we talked about. We're going to be in that mode for a relatively long time, longer than most people anticipate. So when you do the holiday parties, go out and have fun, but be very careful. Stay with your family groups and those people that you associate with regularly to minimize the amount of the spread. Chuck?
I do anticipate, we're seeing that from the Thanksgiving holiday, cases increasing, and I imagine that will be the case through the holiday season.
Christmas and New Year's both.
People are together, they're indoors more, so I think it's natural to assume that. One thing I failed to mention, and Brian's here, but the state is working with the fire department, and our Fire Station 3 is being contemplated for use as an immunization center. So the fire department is working with them on that. So, and that's good news.
But then again, for the people that are, you don't just show up at a station right now. It will be those people that work at the hospital or medical
It'll be in
first line.
priority order, and we'll
it'll
make sure
it'll be
we
a
get
priority order, and you basically get an invitation or notice when you need to show up. And I would imagine as somebody who's over 65, I'm the last one on the
We're in the
list.
third tier, man.
Yeah, I'm on the last one, okay? And,
I already checked that out.
Yeah. But bottom line is, when you hit that third tier of the first priority, it's gonna be a couple of months, and you need to go. You need to go do it. And that's the only way we're gonna get anything back to normal in our community. So we appreciate your support and your consideration, and I would compliment the business owners. I know some of them have changed hours a little bit to accommodate the spread, and they've done a number of things in restaurants, et cetera, and taking care of their people. It's all very important. So we're gonna be in this for a while longer. Don't stop being vigilant is my message. Okay? Anything else before the council? Seeing none, thank you for your participation. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Meeting's adjourned.